basketball is like jazz. There's a jazz musician, a guy. God, what's his name? If you know basketball, you know who I mean. Kenny G. God, I'm glad I remembered that. People know who he is.
Welcome to Kenny's G League, the only podcast all about the Rip City remix. The season is upon us. We're currently 2 games in to the G League season, so let's talk about who we've got on the team. We'll take a listen to some clips from the Remix Media Day, which I was able to attend recently, and then we'll do a quick recap of the 2 games that the team has played so far. Before we get into it, I have to mention basketghoul.com. Go to basketghoul.com, grab a Blazers-related sweatshirt or t-shirt, or you can also grab this current sweatshirt that I really like, the Anti-Social Dog Moms Club sweatshirt. It's really cool. You can grab that one. basketghoul.com. Okay, so let's jump right into it and look at the Remix roster as it stands right now for the beginning of the 2024-2025 season. We've got some names that we will recognize from last year, and then a lot of new names. Let's start with the team's two-way players. If you're new to the G League, a player on a two-way contract is signed by the Portland Trail Blazers to a two-way contract, and they're basically allowed to play 50 games for the Blazers during the season, and then as much time as the team would like them to spend on the G League affiliate, the Remix, during the season as well. So let's take a look at who we have on the two-way. Returning to the Remix, we've got Justin Minaya. This is his 3rd season in Portland. Believe it or not, it kind of seems like that's flown by really fast. His 3rd season in Portland. If you're a listener from last season, you might remember that I dubbed Justin Minaya G League Matisse Thybulle, and I'm going to stick with that name. I think that is pretty apt. He's a really good defender and a player that when he does go up to the Blazers, I don't think you see make a lot of mistakes. He's a fairly reliable player that you can put into the game if the team, has some injuries or something like that. His shooting could come along this season, which I think would go a long ways to kind of solidifying him as a player in the league. Later on, we'll play a clip from Media Day where he spoke to myself and a couple other Blazers reporters. We'll hear from him in a little bit. Also on a two-way this year is Bryce McGowens. Bryce McGowens has kind of been around the NBA. He's spent 2 seasons on the Charlotte Hornets, and then he also played the Summer League this past summer for the Charlotte Hornets. Now, Bryce McGowens, I think, is exactly the kind of player that I like to see on a two-way, in that he definitely has this NBA potential that I think is still maybe untapped a little bit, and you're kind of putting him on a two-way so that if an opportunity presents itself on the Blazers, you have this guy that you think has a lot of upside that can step in if, the Blazers needed an extra guy. In previous seasons, we've seen injuries just kind of decimate the Blazers, and they end up playing some of these two-way players quite a bit, and sometimes they really prove that they do belong in the league. And I could definitely see that for Bryce McGowens this year. He had some fantastic games for the Charlotte Hornets in the last couple seasons. He started a little bit. He got some regular minutes. And now he's here on a two-way. I think that's a good kind of high upside player on a two-way. And the third two-way player is Taze Moore, which you might remember from last year. He was kind of a fan favorite on the Remix. He's a super high energy player. That's the thing that I think is really easy to take away from his game from watching him. He's a high energy player. Obviously, last year he had, I don't even know how many highlight dunks in the Remix games. He was just constantly able to get to the rim. And I think that's kind of what his game is a high energy guy. Now, this will be his 2nd season in Portland. He came through halfway through the year or so for the Remix last year, and then ended up on a 10-day contract by the end of the season, and now he's here from the very beginning of the season on a two-way. He's an interesting player in part because throughout his career so far, he's really had to play a lot of different roles, right? At Media Day the other day, he referred to himself as a point guard, so that's what I'm going to say he is here, is he's a point guard. And in the first couple games of the remix season so far, that's kind of the role he's been playing. But really, even just throughout the G League season last year, he played a lot of different roles. He was playing some forward. Sometimes the G League rosters get a little thin, and he's kind of shifted over into the power forward spot. And previously in his career, he's had to play some center in college, and he's been all over the place. I think this could be, or I'm rooting for this to be his year. I mean, I think he has a spot in the league somewhere. I don't know what that's going to be, and it could depend on a lot of factors like what the team needs and injuries, of course. Those things always come into play. But I think he's got a lot of skills that if he finds the right spot, I think he could be a really interesting player in the league. Like a lot of guys in the G League, such a huge part is shooting. You don't see as many teams with excellent three-point shooting in the G League because that's such a desirable skill in the NBA that if you were the world's greatest three-point shooter, you'd probably be in the NBA, if you had some other related skills. So again, with Taze Moore, we have the athleticism. He's super athletic. I think we're starting to see him kind of feel like he has a little more of a leadership role on the team. And I would love to see his game kind of round out with additional shooting, which I think we're already seeing a little bit. But I think that's going to be a player to watch this season and see what he does on that two-way contract. We'll also hear from him a little bit on Media Day. So those are the three players on two-way contracts this year. Let's take a look at the rest of the remix roster. We've got James Bouknight. James Bouknight spent a couple seasons on the Charlotte Hornets as well. Kind of fell out of the league and is honestly looking to regain his footing in the NBA, and we see players do this all the time in the G League. It's one of the things that is fun to watch, is see who bubbles up during the year, and is able to find their niche kind of in basketball. There's a great article that I'll link in the show notes here that after falling out of the NBA, he kind of went and had a talk with his old college coach from UConn and just kind of about getting his mind right and figuring out what he needs to do to get back on track, and a big part of that from the article was that he needed to find an organization that would be the right fit for him, both coaching wise and and accountability wise, and finding a place that would help him thrive in that. And I'm hopeful that that's Portland. Later in the episode, we're going to hear from the new Remix head coach, and I'm really optimistic that Portland can be that place for him. It certainly seems like they've filled out the coaching staff and front office with a lot of people that are motivated to be the right fit for players. So James Bouknight, he's a kind of a combo guard player that is again one of those high upside players that I think you like to see in the G League. It's always exciting in a league like this where guys are trying to find their spot and find their fit, to have high upside players that if they pop would be an addition in the NBA. So James Bouknight fits that high upside combo guard kind of player role. We've also got Romeo Weems. This is his second season with the Remix. He is a forward, his fourth season in the G League. So Romeo Weems, we saw him a little bit last year in the Remix. I'm curious what he's going to bring this season. Reportedly, he's been looking really good in practices, and they're pretty optimistic on his development just through the summer. So we'll see what he looks like. So far in the season, he hasn't gotten a whole lot of minutes, but it's early, and as we know, the G League rosters change super regularly, and guys will definitely get their opportunity as the season goes on. Henry Drell is a new player for the Remix. This is his 4th season in the G League. Previously, he was with the Bulls, the Windy City Bulls of the G League. His first season with the Remix. He's an interesting player. He's more of a power forward type player. One of the players that I think is giving the team some height. You know, he's like 6'9", 6'10". The Remix got a little bit bigger this year than they were the previous season, where oftentimes you would, have those 3-guard lineups on the court and be wishing you had a little more height out there. I remember one game last year where Mo Harkless was on the Remix, and Mo Harkless in the NBA is kind of your small forward player, but in the G League at the time and on the Remix at the time, he was like the biggest guy on the court. So it's nice to see the Remix adding some players like Henry Drell that give them a little more size on the court. Henry Drell, just as a fun fact, his father, mother, and sister are all professional basketball players. So he grew up definitely around basketball. And he's an international player as well. He grew up in Estonia. All right, let's keep moving down the roster here. Nick Mazinski, he's a brand new player to the G League. This is his first season in the G League. He previously played in Germany professionally, and before that he was in college. And in college he played, let me go look up here, he played for Illinois State. Oh, excuse me, I was going to say the wrong thing there. We haven't, let's see here. I'm going to have to edit this out. He played for Illinois State. As a junior, he averaged 15 points, 5.6 rebounds, 1.6 blocks. And he was named to the first team All OVC as a senior. His first season in the G League. So far, he's been starting for the Remix at center. And kind of curious what he brings. Oftentimes, G League teams are kind of thin at center, and the Remix have a couple good options at center this season. Moving down the line, we've got Thierry Darlan. He is a player I'm very excited to see this season. He's very young. He's 20 years old. This is his second season in the G League, his first with the Remix. Last year he played on the G League Ignite, which, of course, folded. They're no more. The G League Ignite are donezo. But the Blazers were able to grab Thierry Darlan and add him to the Remix. I'm pretty curious about this one, actually, because honestly, I don't really know what the G League will become, to be honest, with the Ignite out. There was kind of a hope for a minute that, the Ignite would be this accelerated, prospect course for young guys. And, we've seen players come through there. Obviously, Scoot Henderson, if you're a Blazers fan. But we've seen several guys come through the Ignite, and then they decided that, hey, this project isn't really working. Guys can make money in college basketball now. That kind of takes away part of the incentive of signing with the Ignite if you can make money in college. Plus, obviously, college has just a different type of competition, let alone March Madness and all of that, which is just like eyeballs on basketball, whereas the Ignite just didn't have that. It doesn't have a tournament where so many people are tuning in to watch TV and see these players. So with the Ignite folding, I'm really interested to see young players in the league and just kind of what that looks like, because honestly, I don't really know what to expect from that. Darlan, he's 20. He's still young, and he's still eligible to be drafted in the NBA. But I think he's still got a lot of development that you want to see before that's like a realistic opportunity. So this last summer he played for Basketball Africa League, and I would just, I got a couple messages from a scout that watched him this summer, and they were pretty intrigued with his development through the last several months. So I'm going to be really interested to see what his year looks like on the remix, and what kind of player he's kind of panning out to be. We've also got Cam Tyson on the remix. This is his first season in the G League. He's from Washington State. He played for Seattle University, scored 2,000 points there, and he's kind of a small guard, but is definitely a shooter. He shot something like 41% from three last season in Seattle. So that's kind of his calling card is shooting. Last season, the remix had Antoine Davis, who was kind of the designated shooter on the team, and we'll see if Cam Tyson kind of fills that role a little bit. Different player, of course, but shooting is always much needed in the G League. The remix also added Aleem Ford. He's going into his fourth season in the G League, first with the remix. He played for the IMG Academy in after high school as kind of like a post-high school year. Interesting little fun fact, he just kind of ran through the same school as Anthony Simons, if you're an Anthony Simons fan. And he's been starting for the remix so far. I think he's been... wait, has he been starting? Let me look this up again. Yeah. So he's been averaging about 10 points in his G League career, 6'8", forward. We'll see what he brings this year. Another player I'm really excited about is Isaac Nogués. This is his first season in the G League. Before this, he was in Spain. He's a pretty interesting player. He's a defensive specialist. He's 20 years old as well. He has like the highest steal percentage of any player in Spanish basketball. It's kind of crazy. I recommend you go watch some of his highlights on YouTube. Certainly not a scorer at this point in his career. You would love to see shooting come around, obviously, like you would for every player. But defense is really his calling card. There's some highlights where he's just like sprinting and just jumping, just like diving midair to get a steal. So kind of reminds me of like Gerald Wallace or something in the way that you could nickname him Crash, just because he's constantly running around the court at like full intensity. That'll be a really interesting player. He's the remix got him in the international draft, which most teams actually don't participate in. But honestly, I don't really understand why. Like if you have a way to acquire the rights to a player, whether those rights become a trade chip later or just a chance to bring the player over or not, you would think you would want to use everything you have at your disposal to acquire talent, whether they come over that year or not. But the Blazers have been pretty active in using the international draft compared to other teams, trading rights for players already, which they've done, or acquiring players like this, Isaac Nogués, and actually bringing them over. Really, really intriguing player. He won the FIBA Under-19 World Cup just a year or two ago. Really intriguing player that, again, I think is just an example of seeing how the league uses young players in the coming seasons, because we don't really have a template for that right now. So it'll just kind of be interesting to see what that looks like. Sterling Manley, this is his first season in the G League. He's going to be competing for center minutes on the remix. Let me bring up some stats on. He's 6'11", 250. He played for University of North Carolina. And he's one of those perfect examples of what the G League is for. we'll see what he brings. I am excited about his potential for sure, because my understanding, just kind of talking to people around the team, is that you could kind of think of him as like a passing big man. He's got at least that ability to kind of see the court. I'm not saying he's going to be like a point center, but he has a vision for the court that you often don't see in big men in the league. So I'm excited to watch him this year. Coming back to the remix for the second season, we got Alex Reese. This was kind of a surprise addition. He just scored his first NBA points for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He signed a contract with them that was unguaranteed, and unfortunately, he was cut from the team after that, right after scoring his first NBA points. But then the remix were able to reacquire him after having him last year and having him on the Blazers Summer League roster. So he's another familiar face around the team this year. If you're not familiar with him, he's definitely kind of what you would probably used to call a stretch four, which in the NBA now is just a four, I guess. But yeah, he's that stretch four kind of player. He's become quite a good shooter, and is able to kind of, stretch the floor to the 3-point line while still being pretty physical, bigger player. I'm excited to see him this year because I think he does have a spot in the NBA, whether that's as a two-way player or legit on a regular contract. I don't know, but I think we've kind of seen that he does have the skills to be in the NBA. He's scored points in the NBA, and I would love to see him get his opportunity this year. So he's one of those players that I will definitely be looking at and rooting for finding his spot in the league at some point during this year, because I think he does have pretty translatable skills to the NBA. Anytime you have someone that has shooting and size, you got a pretty good thing going, honestly. In the G League, if you can shoot and you have size, that usually bodes well for you. So with a little bit of a look at the roster, let's take a listen to some clips from Remix Media Day. Let's hear first from the new head coach of the Remix, Sergi Oliva.
You've had a lot of different roles in basketball, from like youth basketball in Spain, and obviously NBA front office, and you're in the Blazers front office, as well as coaching the Remix. How do you think those things kind of will work together to inform like what the Remix do this season?
I think having a lot of different experiences is always helpful. Sometimes those things do not translate necessarily into anything in particular. Mm-hmm. It's not you end up doing what you did back then now. It's more the experience of having gone through certain contexts or different environments in your life ends up shaping you in ways that hopefully give that background where your thought is able to reach a different level just because you've had those experiences that you've learned from somehow. There's an amazing book that I love from David Epstein. It's called Range. I don't know if you guys... And it talks a lot about that, right? The best musicians are generally not guys that play a single instrument. They play the bass pianist plays also the violin, right? And I really believe in those things. And the idea that I believe in them for myself or even for the players, right? The more that you can put people in different positions, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the role that they're going to take, but it may mean that thanks to that, they are able to perform at their role better. And that's the same way I think about it for myself, whether it's front office or coaching, honestly.
I thought that was a great answer to my question there from the new head coach, Sergi Oliva, about kind of how all of his different experiences will inform, how he's a coach of the G League. He's coached before. He's been an assistant coach in the NBA. He's coached basketball in Spain, but he's also worked in front offices. He's still working in the front office for the Trailblazers, and he's also worked in other places in the league. But I thought this was an interesting answer. He mentioned this book, Range, by David Epstein, which I'll have to pick up. I haven't read this book. So I'm just kind of checking the book out here. And it seems like the theme of the book is basically why people that are good at a variety of things, people that are generalists, are often very good at what they do, as opposed to people that focus on one singular thing and they only do that one thing, right? Now, I thought this was an interesting book to reference here, just because it kind of reminds me a little bit of the conversation I had last year with Alex Sarama, who's now working for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and his approach to coaching, right? So if you want to listen to that episode, highly recommend it. Go back to last season's episode where I talked to Alex Sarama. But basically, we talked about his coaching practices and how he has a little bit of a unorthodox approach to basketball. And a big part of that approach is that he implements something called the CLA, the constraints-led approach, which, if I'm going to oversimplify it and not quite do it justice, it's basically a framework for coaching and understanding performance. And so rather than, focusing on doing a task one way and getting really comfortable with doing it that one way, the constraints-led approach kind of emphasizes constraints in practice so that you're practicing adapting to those constraints rather than learning how to do something one way and focusing on only doing it that one way forever. That's an oversimplified version of it, but I think you get the idea, right? The constraints-led approach is about creating constraints in practice and then performing within and around those constraints, right? And I think that works for what he's talking about here in the book Range, where you want to be a generalist rather than a specialist, right? Now, I talked to someone recently, and they told me that the Remix are very interested and invested in going in on the constraints-led approach to coaching and development. And I think that's really interesting, and I think that ties in super well with what Oliva was saying here, right? You want to be a generalist and be able to adapt to different situations. And that's, honestly, it seems very basic in a lot of ways, but it's pretty transformative for sports, because often we think about sports as being like, okay, I learn how to shoot in this one shooting motion, or whatever, and I only do it that way, or I always, practice this type of drill, and the drill is about getting repetitions in, right? That's often how we practice different things, whether it's basketball or an instrument or whatever. We often think of it about repetition, but this is kind of reframing that and saying, well, in real life, in a real game, it's not really about repetition. It's about being able to be flexible, because your defender is never going to come at you the same way. Your shot in basketball is not going to be under the same circumstances as it would be, in practice, right? So I'm really interested in the topic. I think that was a really great answer by Oliva there, because it kind of, to me, ties into how supposedly the Remix are very invested in kind of this new way of coaching and new way of development, embracing kind of these new ideas. So again, yeah, I'd go check out Alex Sarama's stuff for an idea of how I got introduced to that last year. And then obviously it'll be different. He's not with the team this year, but already we're kind of seeing that the current coach, is influenced in his own work by like this idea of being a generalist and using those things to bring you into whatever you're doing now, whether that's coaching the Remix or playing for the Remix. So I thought that was a great answer. Let's hear a little more from Sergey Oliva.
What are your personal coaching philosophies, and how much do you have to blend those philosophies with Chauncey Billups and the Blazers team?
I think it's less so about the concepts and more about the method, like what type of drills or situations or context can we create for the players in order to grow in those areas. But from a conceptual standpoint on what we're trying to do to play, I think it's just taking these ideas that the Blazers are trying to implement already and seeing how can we bring them to the next level somehow in the G League, and then kind of having a blueprint that we've been using that may or may not be successful, and we're going to try that, right?
Yeah.
In order to do that at a higher level.
Do you have a message for Handfruit Nation? Handfruit Nation.
Oh no, I'm ready. So before I for being now in this position, I've been a Handfruit consumer. I've gone to the stand and asked what was the Handfruit of the day, and I think oranges sometimes are a little harder to deal with in the stands, but apples tend to have an easier approach, if that makes sense.
So there you go. Some comments from new head coach Sergi Oliva. He's definitely having fun with the Hand Fruit Nation thing there. Wasn't sure if he had heard of that, so that was kind of fun. Let's hear next from Justin Minaya.
How's this camp been going for you so far?
Yeah, it's been really good. It's been really good just getting to meet all my new teammates and just getting back playing again, getting a whole bunch of reps in practice, and it's been cool. We've all been together, we've been playing hard, we've been guarding really hard, so that's been fun.
I know he's right there in the corner, but how has it been getting along with the new coach, Sergi?
It's been amazing. It's been literally amazing. He's been so open with me, so just amazing. Just showing me how to play, teaching me new concepts, and just giving me a lot of free range to just work on myself and work on getting better. Some of the best things that I feel comfortable defensively to be able to really improve and test things out and really just kind of experiment on certain ways I can get better and maybe not even be so afraid to make a mistake because I know he's giving me free range to kind of do that, so that's been helping me a lot.
You've been in Portland a few seasons now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like that's kind of grown your playing and career?
Yeah, I know it's crazy. Time kind of goes really fast. Like this is going to be almost my third season. So, but it's been really good. I mean, I feel comfortable. I feel like I'm part of the family, and I just feel really blessed to be in an organization that has my back. I feel like, and I appreciate them just kind of looking after me through a lot of different things throughout these years. So it's been good.
You've been here 3 years, but every year, like the remix team is different. You know, like what is that process like each year? Getting, you're in the same place, but getting used to new players and new teammates.
Yeah, I love it. I love just building new relationships with new teammates. And something about the G League that is just a little bit like the camaraderie is just a little different because you're kind of sticking a little bit more together. The NBA is great too. But the G League is just a certain type of like closeness and relationships that you build a little bit because you're in airports together. You're spending a lot more time together with each other. Where in the NBA it's a little bit more. Everybody has their own families and you have your own little situation going. And I had such good like vets that kind of passed down information for me. And now with some of these young guys, I'm trying to do the same thing for them.
Do you remember some of those vets?
Yeah, Shabazz Napier, he's like...
Blazer legend.
Yeah.
Shabazz was like my big bro. He's like my vet. Him, and even I was with Skylar Mays there, Kenneth Fareed, a bunch of dudes, Alfonso McKinney. So I had a bunch of vets that kind of just showed me the way.
Blazers legend all the way around for Justin Minaya, both himself and learning from some Blazers legends earlier in his career. Let's move now to some comments from Taze Moore.
So what have kind of been some of the differences between this camp and the camp you were in last year there?
I feel like this year is nothing to them. It's just much more intensity. Like, we're learning, but we're learning through playing. So that comes with a default of always having, like, turnovers or just messy plays. But I think it's easier to fix those kind of things instead of just having to, like me personally, I'm a visual learner. So I would rather play, mess up, play, get it right. And just mess up once or two times. Then you talk, and then I still mess up because I really didn't understand it visually. So that's just me personally. A lot of guys are different, but I think that's one thing that kind of helps me here in the G League also.
Yeah, what's it been like reuniting with teammates like Alex and Justin, but then also getting to know so many new faces?
It's fun. Rome too. Rome's with us last year.
Yeah.
But being with those guys again is just like having that sense of like brothers. You know how it's like 4 brothers in the house. I'm probably like the oldest. Rome is the baby one. Reese is the middle child, and then Just is like the next one, like the second oldest. So it all kind of helps out in a way. And then bringing in the new guys it's kind of fun, because they always come to you in a sense of like, how do you want to do this? Or like me personally, me being a point guard, like where do you want me to be? What's the communication for what you want me to say? So I think that's just cool because we all kind of like form this bond together to know that like whenever things break down, we always gonna have each other back in a way.
One of the crazy things about your career so far is you've basically played in so many places, so many positions. You played in Canada over the summer. Yeah. Congratulations on the MVP in Canada.
Thank you.
And now you're back here. Does it feel any different going into this season, kind of having a little bit of a history here now and on a two-way?
I feel like now it gives me, I feel like last year I wasn't a pro. fully. And I feel like Canada helped me become a pro. Coach Kyle, Coach Julius, if he hears this, I love him, because it was days in practice where he told me like reasons why I would be where I would be and reasons why I wouldn't be where I would be. And a lot of that has to deal with myself personally, that I feel like. So I just had to take a lot of time to sit back and think about actions and future what you want to say, future things that I would want for myself and my family, mom, kids, you know what I'm saying, things that I wouldn't want to take away from them because of my actions. So that was just mainly the big thing for me coming in this year with a better mindset and being more positive.
What's the story behind 76?
Glad you asked that, because a lot of people don't. So my original number is 4. I think that's teeth. I love teeth, so I won't beat him up for it. But nah, that's my dude. Nah, facts. Nah, that's my dude, man. I love teeth. But 76 is for my grandmother. She had my mother in 77. She graduated school in 76. So that was kind of the easiest number for me to like go to. I could have went to like the 90, one of her favorite years in the 90s or whatever, but I feel like 76 holds a much more special time when the year before she was pregnant with my mom, the year before all of that, and she graduated school. Meanwhile, I don't have her with me anymore, so that was just kind of one thing to keep her with me while I'm on my journey to making it.
Some really great stuff there from both Justin Minaya and Taze Moore. One thing that I thought was interesting was just that they both talked about kind of the difference in this training camp versus previous training camps they've been a part of, other places in the world and in the league. Justin Minaya talked specifically about how like he kind of has free reign to try new things and make mistakes, right? He's kind of like earned that as a player, which I think plays into the type of stuff that they want to do with the remix, kind of going into those new strategies for training and development. And just like Taze Moore said, he's more of a visual learner and learns by doing, right? As opposed to some other places in the league where you learn by repetition. And it sounds like that's just not the prioritized route that the Blazers and the remix are going, which I think is really super cool. And it goes right back into all of those things like the CLA, the constraints-led approach, where you're training by adding in constraints. You're kind of almost gamifying training to learn by doing. So I think that's really super neat. Last thing we're going to talk about today, let's check out the 2 games that have already happened for the remix. The remix played 2 games, both against the Clippers. Now, unfortunately, they lost both those games, but let's go over a couple highlights and kind of get an idea what happened. The San Diego Clippers defeated the Rip City Remix 122-107 on Friday. Now, that game was pretty close, actually, throughout the game. The Clippers ended the third quarter on an 8-0 run, though, which tied the game entering the fourth quarter. San Diego opened the fourth quarter, outscoring the Remix 24-9 after that, and that's kind of the ball game for you. By the time the Remix made a little bit of a run, it was kind of getting down into the clutch, and then the Clippers hit a couple buckets, one by Elijah Harkless, which really kind of sealed the game there for them by the end. For the Remix, we had Taze Moore. He had 28 points in that game, 4 steals, 4 assists, 8 rebounds. James Bouknight, he had 25 points on 8 of 19 shooting. He hit 6 threes. He was having quite a shooting night there. He also had 4 assists and 4 rebounds. And then Bryce McGowens, who I think we're going to see a lot of this season, had 18 points, 3 assists, 1 of 8 from 3. So not his best 3-point shooting night, but his presence was felt out there for sure. In Game 2 against the Clippers, the Remix got off to a pretty hot start. They got off to a 16-point lead thanks to Henry Drell's quick 8 points in the first quarter. But the Clippers closed out the quarter, cutting down the lead to 4 after a 12-0 run. Back and forth second quarter ended up with a tie game at half, 62-62. Clippers started the third quarter with a 10-3 run and then kind of grew the lead from there. Kobe Brown had 13 points in the quarter alone, and by the end of the quarter, the Clippers were up by 16 points. The Remix would go on a 15-0 run, which got them part of the way there. and they ended up down 105-100 by the time the fourth quarter started. Then again, we went on another run from the Clippers, 12-0 Clippers run, and then they outscored the Remix 32-21 in the quarter. Let's check out who was our high scorers in this game. Bryce McGowan once again had a nice game, 24 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 7 for 14 from the floor, 1 for 5 from 3. We've also had Henry Drell, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 3 for 7 from 3. Alex Reese had a nice game, 16 points and 7 rebounds, 3 of 5 from 3. We know he can light it up from 3. So, those are the 2 games we've played so far, 0-2. The Remix play again on, let me check here, Monday against the Salt Lake City Stars, and then Wednesday also against the Salt Lake City Stars. Those are both away games. First home game, November 22nd. That'll do it for today's episode. Come back again next week. We're going to have a special episode with a guest next week. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.